Okay, so welcome back, Elaine, to the Zoom room for another Art of Letting Go live session. We'll just have a look at our emails, our daily quote, a little bit of teaching around that, which prepares us beautifully for today's lesson, which is all about letting go of grievances. So I'll just share my screen with you. Okay, so there's the screen. You can read the headline quote to start with. That would be great.
Yeah. She released her grievances like a handful of birdseed. They are there, and then they are gone.
Yeah, it's from a book written by an American author called Gillian Flynn, which I thought was a lovely image of just tossing your grievances away, just like you let go of birdseed, without attachment, and you expect the seed to be gone.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah. And as today's workbook lesson emphasizes, these grievances have nothing to do with love. Imagine how free you'd be if you could just toss them away with the same
would be lovely.
carefree abandon as you scattered birdseed when you were a child.
Yeah.
But as we know, it's not that easy. They're kind of sticky.
Yeah. As an adult, yeah. Yeah.
The grievances tend to stick.
They do. They do.
In your mind and often recur. And you think you've let it go, and then it comes up again, and a grievance is built out of anger. There's a resentment. There's a judgment implicit in the grievance. There's a feeling of feeling unfairly treated, that you're somehow a victim, and all of that makes the separate self real. That movement of your mind gives some kind of reality to a separate identity, which is the whole point of the grievance. So we've got to see very clearly what a grievance is and what it does, what the ego's intention is with these grievances. And once we see through the game, then we should have the motivation to let them go, because we realize that it's just a stupid game ego's asking us to play. And the only purpose of the game, in its view, is to keep your identification with it going. So the more grievances you have, the stronger the ego gets, and that's what it wants. So then it creates a world and a life where apparently grievances are justified. So it's all a setup. You could look on this world and go, the world is a setup for grievances, but so it's also a setup for a miracle, because you can always choose to see every grievance differently and change your mind about it. And that's the flip side of every grievance. There's always an opportunity to correct your mind, to let it go. And of course, that's what we should be doing with this practice.
I mean, does that imply, like, for example, very cold weather? Do I flip it and decide it's sunny?
No. So, yeah, I mean, it's a good point. You can have a grievance against the weather, and many people do, especially in the UK. People have a, huge,
it's a big conversation.
Yeah, massive time. Oh, the weather. Oh, it's really, it's really cold.
Big
wet.
conversation.
Oh, summer's never coming. And then the interesting thing is they even have a grievance when it gets hot. Have you noticed that?
True.
30 degrees. Oh,
true.
Wave. Oh, it's getting to. So, okay, well,
yeah.
now it's actually warm, and now it's too hot for you. So unless it's absolutely perfect, like 25 degrees or something, you've got a grievance. Well, You know, that means
you're
you
in
got a
trouble.
grievance
Yeah.
most days of the year if you live in the UK. It's not that often.
Hmm.
So it's not like you pretend it's sunny. You just don't bother. It's like, well, the weather doesn't really affect my state of mind.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's cold or wet or sunny or rainy, is irrelevant because my state of mind is eternal. It's not affected by vagaries of this world like the weather.
Hmm.
And that's the way to forgive it or let it go. There's no aversion to it. There's no craving for it. What Yeshua calls an idle wish. Oh, I just really wish for hot weather. And then of course, you know, you're in cold, miserable weather and you're wishing for hot weather. And then somehow you're not happy with the current environment. So, you know, there's a grievance there and there's an unhappiness.
Hmm.
And then, you know, you can resist what is. There's an aversion as well. You're craving for better weather and you have aversion to the current weather. Oh, you know, it's really cold. Why is it so cold? And it's already the end of April. When is summer coming? And you tell yourself a whole story and you feel disconnected from love in that process, if you're honest about it. You don't feel
Yeah.
particularly expanded or inspired. It's kind of a lower energy contracted state. And most people get so used to that kind of living with a grievance mindset that they just think that's normal.
Mm. Hmm.
But as Jess was saying in today's lesson, you know, grievances block your awareness of love's presence. So they actually condemn you to death. A single grievance against the weather, for instance, or any person or anything, in fact, condemns you to the ego's thought system, which is a thought system of death. Ultimately, the ego is a death wish. So it condemns you to death, one grievance. It's quite shocking, actually, when you first start to realize the full imports of your thoughts. You can be quite shocked with this, can't you?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I think the
You
other
know,
thing is,
I didn't realize a little grievance against the weather or a little bit of irritation towards anyone is a thought system of death. And basically, I'm condemning myself to
yeah,
death in that moment.
it feels
And
real, but I know what you're saying. Yes. Well, like the weather with it being 3, you're kind of
mm,
shivering, your hands are cold, you can't relax
mm.
as much. But I guess that's
But
where I
that's a
need to
decision in the
change.
mind. In the end,
Yeah.
your mind can overcome any physical sensation. So, maybe your body, you have sensation going on in your body,
Yes.
but
Yes.
it's only your interpretation of that sensation that's the problem. And that's the grievance.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't like the feeling. I blame the weather. I'm
Hmm.
feeling less than comfortable because of the weather. And I
Yeah.
tell myself a story. And it's very subconscious. And then what you do is you make the story real and you make the character experiencing the story real. And that's
Yes.
how it perpetuates itself. So it's a massive lesson, it's actually, because,
It
I
is.
mean, as
It
you correctly
is.
point out, it's not just a grievance against another person. Like we all understand that. I'm angry with the person and I'm holding resentment towards them. Yeah, that's certainly something you've got to look at and let go of. But it's the grievances against life. Just, it might be the weather, it might be traffic,
Parking tickets. Parking
it might be
tickets.
parking tickets, it might be the government and the way they're running the country, it might be whatever is seemingly
Lots of
going on.
things. Yeah.
No, there's lots of things that push people's buttons, and then they have a grievance towards that. And obviously, the more they think about that grievance, the more
Could you
disconnected
just,
they become from their source, and the more
sorry, could
identified
I
they become.
just interrupt you there? There's something happened today. The dog's barking. You see, it's like he's falling down the hill. Can I just quickly check? Day's gone out and
Yeah,
he's just not come back and the dog's barking and so on. Can I
yeah,
just check he's all right? 2
yeah,
seconds.
do that. So, um, in this bonus recording, we did a breath-based meditation, incorporating the 2-step letting go process, and then We read the short section on what is forgiveness. Start of part 2 of the workbook. So I'll go through these briefly, the 2-step process. Here's a simple process of becoming aware, first of all, of your thoughts and emotions. This is absolutely key. You must bring awareness into whatever we're doing. You back, Elaine?
Yeah, oh, I'm back, yeah. It was just the dog was barking and normally barks when there's a problem. Yeah, that's fine. Sorry. Yeah.
All okay? Okay. So
Yeah.
in this, I gave you a little recording from a session I did with the UK Miracle Network 3 years ago, where we looked at the 2-step letting go. Well, I guided them to the 2-step letting go process, and then I read this short section on what is forgiveness. So the 2-step process, it really boils down this forgiveness or letting go process to the essence, because there's 2 main components of it. There's a fleshed out 10-step process, but the core of it is these two steps. The first step being that you must acknowledge the thoughts and emotions about the situation and the personal people involved that are disturbing your peace. So you acknowledge the grievance, in other words. Okay, so I have a little grievance, maybe a big grievance. I feel irritated. I feel annoyed. Maybe I feel anger. Maybe I even feel rage and hatred. Actually, it's all the same. It just says, a little bit of irritation is just a cover for intense rage at some point in the course. So it's to really become aware of this. Just be fully present and aware of these thoughts and emotions, but remain quite detached from them to stop them from triggering more negative thoughts and emotions. So you can imagine yourself just kind of being, as you observe them, can you just imagine yourself being separate from or floating above the thoughts and emotions that you're observing personally?
Be very nice.
So that grievance against the weather, let's just take that as an example.
Yeah, that's a good example. Yes.
Okay, so if you can just zoom out of going, okay, well who's actually thinking that? Who's experiencing this? Who's thinking this? Who's experiencing this slightly negative reaction towards the weather? And you zoom out of that, then you go into the higher awareness position where you can start to look at that thought, emotion, and go, well, if I can look at it, then it can't be me, because there's another awareness that can look at it and is aware of it. So that this is all we have to do to go into our higher awareness. It's like look from a higher perspective and go, okay, so that whole thought, feeling, emotion that so-called I have been feeling maybe for an hour or 2 or a few days or whatever it is I can just zoom out of it and I can see it as just a bundle of thoughts and emotions. And if I can see it like that, then how can I be it? There must be another awareness in me that can then, see it clearly. And so this helps us to detach from it and go into our higher awareness. It starts the process of detaching from the ego's thought system, doesn't it? And being able to be the observer and have a sense of, well, I'm actually not that affected by this. I'm more observing it. I'm observing that without without getting like sucked into the story and really getting attached. And then you can kind of start. That's the first start of letting it go, isn't it? That's how it starts. Because if I'm no longer that attached and there's another awareness that's able to look at it, then maybe you can go to the next step, which is to decide to let it go. Okay, so it's causing me some kind of pain. If you're honest, it's maybe not an extreme pain. If it's the weather, it's just a kind of a little niggle on a scale of 1 to 10. Maybe it's a 1 or a 2, but it's just kind of niggling there. It would be like a little blister or sore or something. It's just kind of niggling. It's not that serious. But nevertheless, it's a form of pain, and you recognize it as such because you just have the awareness to do that, and then the obvious choice is to say, well, I consciously choose to let this go. I don't want to experience this anymore. I'm quite happy to let go of the thought and the feeling. And so, by experiencing it fully for a few moments, you then in a position to go, okay, well, do I like that feeling? I'm really conscious of it. I'm aware of it. Could I just drop that thought and that feeling right now? And then you do some breathing just to facilitate it, because breathing helps you go into the parasympathetic nervous system. It helps calm your mind. And there's a kind of a natural, okay, I'm inhaling, I'm aware, I can really look at it while I'm inhaling and holding my breath. And then when I exhale, there's a natural release. In fact, I think in Greek, the word exhale is the same as the word for forgiveness. Don't quote me on that, but someone once told me that. And it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Because in the exhale, there's a natural releasing or letting go, and then, mentally, emotionally, you're doing the same thing. So why not combine them? And this is the whole point of doing the breath work along with forgiveness or letting go, which is why I incorporated breath work into every meditation and every breath break, because it helps you just to facilitate the process of, first of all, coming into awareness, and then secondly, letting it go. You can add in visualization if you want. So you can go into breathing in the light, imagining light if that helps you, coming into whatever areas that feel dark, in other words, contracted, limited. So there's a natural tendency to inhale, you breathe in the light, you can hold it there briefly. So the breath holding is quite helpful because you come to a sense of stillness. In the stillness, you connect with your source. And then, you exhale and you just release all of that darkness. Imagine it's like a dark cloud or a black smoke. That contraction, that limitation, that feeling, really, isn't it? It's like a thought feeling. And it's a choice to just say, okay, I'm dropping that. In the end, what you've done then through this forgiveness process is you've isolated that feeling. You've gone, okay, I'm able to really look at it and isolate it and look at it with my awareness. And so then it's not so overwhelming. It's just a kind of bundle of thoughts, and I can kind of see that whole construct. But know that I'm not it. And now it's much easier to let it go, having done step one. Because it's no longer just consuming you and your mind's spinning out and you're just confused and you've got no control over it. No, you've kind of isolated and gone, okay, so that's it. It's just like a bundle of thoughts and emotions, and it's all triggered usually by something in form. I've made a judgment of something that I don't like in form about another person, their behavior, about the weather, about whatever it is. And that's triggered a series of thoughts and emotions that now forms this complex. We can call it an ego construct. But I can see that it doesn't really feel good, if I'm honest. It's a form of pain, and so I can choose to let it go. And that's the second step. And I think this is what distinguishes Yeshua's teaching from maybe other teachings. Most teachings that are authentic talk about awareness. Say, well, all you have to do is be aware. Well, that's step one. It's a prerequisite. Without awareness, you don't even know what to let go of. There's no awareness that there's even a problem. Problem becomes you. So awareness is absolutely key, no doubt. But then with this radical forgiveness, the decision to let go is key as well. So okay, so I'm making a decision to let go of the pain, knowing full well that when I do that, what I'm really deciding is that I don't want to be a separate self. And I think this is the key point. In the second part, you become very aware that I'm actually letting go of my separate self that has judged the situation incorrectly. And so it's a correction of my perception, but it's also a correction in my identification. I'm now, by letting it go, identifying with who I really am, which is just pure formless awareness of perfect love, completely beyond pain. And without step two, I think step one is only a halfway house. You can be aware of stuff, but then if you don't let it go, the separate self remains. Okay, so I'm aware of this, and there's this pain and thing going on, but that without letting it go, it can become overwhelming. I think this is part of why people don't want to do it. Okay, well, I become aware of it. It's just too painful. And then what do I do with it? Now it's all come up. I'd prefer it just to be buried, and that I'm not really aware of it. It's in my subconscious because I can't handle it. But if you understand the metaphysics of the course and you apply it to these kinds of things, then the decision to let go is a relief. It makes complete sense. It's the only option, and you know then what to do with any pain as it arises. And yeah, I've just got to let this go. So without step two, step one is I'm stillborn. It's a halfway house. It doesn't really get you home. And obviously without step one, step two wouldn't be possible. You can't decide to let go of the pain if you're not even aware of it. You know, if you're so in the pain that you think the pain is you and you completely identify, but how do you let go of it without the awareness that actually you're not it? You can't. Yeah. So they work hand in glove. It's like a left if you use a boxing analogy, it's like the left-right combination, you know. The left opens the guy up, opens the ego up, and lets go of its defenses. So that's step one. And then the right comes in and knocks it out. In other words, undoes it, lets it go. And you need both. A boxer with one hand just jabbing wouldn't be that effective, would he? Same way. It's like, okay, you need both of these in your arsenal, and to get good at both of these. Some people are great at step one, but they don't really get to step two because they don't necessarily have the metaphysics. I saw that when I did the Vipassana retreat. I thought, what's just missing out of this? I mean, there's great, and it's awareness, and you become aware of the thoughts and emotions and the body in and via the body sensations. But then there's no conscious decision to let it go. It's just an awareness practice, you know. The idea is that there's kind of a letting go that happens automatically. And I think, to an extent, there's obviously this detachment that starts to happen. But if you bring it into conscious awareness and you're okay, and I have the metaphysics in step two, you see, to decide to let go of the pain, you need to really be aware of the metaphysics. That this world's an illusion. And the reason why you can let go of anything is because it's ultimately not real. It's just a false made up story that is not true, because underlying it is your true awareness, pure formless awareness of perfect love, which never changes. So the pain, the suffering, or anything that's not just pure formless awareness of perfect love is then an illusion. It's a veil of illusion that covers over the truth, and the only way to know the truth then is to let go of the veil. You've got to drop the veil away to reveal the truth. And without these the metaphysics, that becomes hard to do. So this is why Yeshua, he's teaching us practices to become aware, but he's also teaching us vitally to let go for the only reason that is really justified in letting go, and that's because it's not real, because it's false, it denies reality, and there's a deeper reality underneath it. And that's why you can let go of anything, no matter how seemingly painful it is. This teaching is bulletproof, and it will always work ultimately, because there's no hierarchy of illusions. An illusion is an illusion is an illusion. They're all illusions, and they can all be treated the same way. So that's the two-step letting go process. It's quite useful. Again, short, quick. You could do this in probably under a minute. Practice it. I've given you the document. It's really incorporated into every breath break. So if you do a breath break, you're kind of doing the two-step letting go process, unless there's a very specific process that he's talking about. In most of them, is this process of becoming aware. I ask you to look at it as you breathe in, then you bring the idea in, you apply the idea to what you just looked at, and you use that to do step two and help you to let it go with the help of your exhalation. So you don't have to worry if you do the breath breaks, then you're actually practicing this, but this just kind of spells it out. Sometimes it's useful to go to the principles behind it and say, well, this is actually what we're doing. in these breath breaks, which you may not have been aware of. Okay, so and, there's a short section on what is forgiveness. You can have a quick look at. So let's just do the first paragraph if you want to read that.
Yeah. Forgiveness recognizes what you thought your brother did to you has not occurred. It does not pardon sins and make them real. It sees there was no sin, and in that view are all your sins forgiven. What is sin except a false idea about God's Son? Forgiveness merely sees its falsity and therefore lets it go. What then is free to take its place is now the will of God. Pure formless awareness of perfect love.
Yeah, and forgiveness is just letting go.
Mm-hmm.
So this makes it very clear. It's just unreal. There was no sin. You never did anything wrong. No one ever did anything wrong, because this whole so-called reality is just a dream. And what happens in a dream is of no consequence in reality. And in that view, all your sins, which remember are just mistakes that you made real and permanent and punishable, by making them permanent in your perception and punishable, you make them real. So this undoes that. By denying them, what you're doing is really denying that the ego ever happened, aren't you? Well, there's no error. There's nothing to feel guilty about because it never happened. It's just a false idea about God's Son. And this is the only way out of the dream world. So we look at descent into hell again. And you see the evolution of it. One tiny mad idea, false idea of separation, leads you down the ladder of separation. Now you believe in this false idea. It leads you to believe in an individual self. You then feel guilty, sinful at your very core, because apparently you exist because you've destroyed God. You see, this is the core delusion of the ego. Your existence is predicated on the destruction of God or pure formless awareness, of perfect love, which is everything that is beautiful, good, holy, true, of any real value. So of course you're going to feel guilty for doing that. This is the ego's foundation. And this is why you can't never make the ego work, because in order to exist, it must think it's destroyed pure formless awareness of perfect love, because it contradicts it. And then the guilt and the sin are inevitable. You must believe in those, because apparently you've destroyed love in order to exist. So at its very core, the ego feels guilty and sinful. But it can't handle that. It doesn't like that feeling. So it projects it out. The fear, false expectation of punishment that comes with guilt and sin, it is really not a nice feeling. We've all experienced fear. And so what we do is to offload this guilt and the sin and fear onto someone else. We attack. And we project it all out onto someone else, and we accuse them and we blame them and we attack them, and you say, it's your fault that I feel this way. It's not my fault. It's not because I denied God and I made this silly mistake of believing in the separate self. No, I'm suffering because of you and because of what you've done. And this could be the weather, it could be anything. It doesn't have to be a person. But I'm suffering because of some form of external cause. This enacts the idea of a fearful, wrathful, and separate God, because apparently now I'm being punished from outside of me. And apparently the punishment that I feared, false expectation of punishment appearing real, does become real to me. And so this is how the system works. You've got to see this very clearly in order to understand that there's no hope in the ego. Because as long as you believe in a separate self, you will have guilt and sin, you will fear, and you will project that fear out as attack. And then you're caught up in, and then the more you attack, the more guilty you feel, the more your separate self is strengthened, and you keep going round and around and around in that circle of pain and suffering and misery and ultimately death until you die. And because the mind can't really die, you come back and you do it all over again in another body in another lifetime. And we've been on this cycle of birth and death, going round and around, really spinning our wheels like a hamster on a wheel for a long, long time, for many, many lifetimes. And Yeshua's saying, okay, so let's look at it honestly, let's see what you're in, and let's collapse it. You don't have to do this anymore. And your way out of this is just letting go. This radical letting go, so that the Holy Spirit really reinterprets the whole dream by simply saying, well, the thought of separation isn't real. So nothing that comes from separation can be real. So it looks upon all the consequences of this unreal thought and dismisses them. It says, no, they're all unreal because the cause is unreal. The separation never happened. And that's how you reinterpret the whole dream, and you restore your mind back to its source, to this state of pure formless and oneness of perfect love. So it's a very simple methodology, isn't it? It's enormously simple. Mm-hmm. But to practice it when now you're facing the projections, the guilt and the sin and the fear seemingly have real effects, and you see those in the world. You face those projections every day, and now you've got to forgive or let go of it. Isn't that easy? And that's why we have a mind training course where we have 365 daily lessons and a whole text to train our minds to perceive correctly and to do this reinterpretation in the face of the ego's madness, so we can ultimately free ourselves. Okay, so any thoughts on that? Any questions? Let's move on then. So good session. Watch it. There was a good meditation, and we talked about the two-step process. We read the short section, what is forgiveness? And we did 10 minutes of silence, so it's about a 15-minute meditation. And then there was some Q&A. So afterwards, they asked, a couple of people asked questions. One of them was about listening to Yeshua as a guide. And the other one was how the Shakespearean iambic pentameter, in which much of A Course in Miracles is written, helps to guide the reader into a deeper meditative state. So iambic pentameter is this. It's what most of the text from certainly from the middle of the text is written in. More than half the text written in Shakespearean iambic pentameter. It has a sort of rhythm and a kind of poetic quality to it, and that's quite soothing. That helps to take one into a meditative state, which is why I think Yeshua did it. Okay, so watch that. And then interestingly, because that session was really the seed. From that seed, the session just over 3 years ago now, that's the reason why we're speaking. If that hadn't happened, Sue and John wouldn't have joined the program. They then referred Sally referred Jackie referred you, and so that's how it goes. It's a good demonstration of Yeshua's parable of the sower, which you can read along with this interpretation here. So let's have a read of the parable of the sower. Parable about a man who goes and he's sowing his seed. The man represents God, and the seed is his message. Just as a planted seed starts to grow, the word of God starts to deepen and grow within a person. Some seed fell on the path, and the birds ate it, said Yeshua. So the birds represent Satan, the devil, the ego, whatever you want to call it. Represents people who hear the message, but it's immediately lost. So there might be people and they go, okay, I kind of get that. And then it doesn't really go very deep, does it? It's like they don't really change anything. The seed hasn't really taken root in them. They're focused on other things. They've got more important things to do. And, we all know people like that. Some seed fell on a rocky ground where there was little soil. The seed soon sprouted, but when the sun came up, it burnt the young plants. So that represents people who respond with initial enthusiasm. They might go, wow, this course is amazing. I really get excited. And then something happens, difficult times, they get tested, which is inevitable if you're on this path. Represent, the harsh sun represents that. Then they give up. They go, no, this isn't for me. I've got to find an easier way, a better way. And they abandon it. So they give up, when the going gets tough, as it surely will do. Inevitably, you're going to face difficult times. If you're going up against the ego, it is going to defend, and it uses the world to defend. So, the difficult times are its defense mechanism to try and get you to believe in its thought system. Then there was seed that fell among thorn bushes, which grew up and choked the plants. So the thorn bushes choke the message of God, the message of love. It's heard, but people's concern for other things like worldly success, riches, worries about life cause the plants to die. So some people are too concerned with what others think. They worry too much. They may be jealous, angry, or concerned with materialism. And as Yes just said very clearly, and he says it over and over in the course, there's only two masters. You can't honor both. If you honor the God of materialism, then you must deny the true God of pure formless awareness that's beyond this world, because both cannot be true. The form and the formlessness deny each other. And then finally, some seed fell on the good soil, and the plants produced corn. And there were some who produced 30 plants, and then some 60 and some 90. So it was a parable. So saying, well, people will do this to varying degrees. They hear the message, they live it, and they apply it to varying degrees. And so, it's just degrees of their faith. They remain dedicated to these teachings no matter what. And when the going gets tough, then they actually deepen into the teachings. They don't abandon them. They go, well, this is exactly what the teachings are for. I remember going through it's kind of a midlife crisis combined with spiritual awakening almost 10 years ago now. And it was very clear to me. I was like, okay, well, this is really the chance to deepen my understanding and my faith in these teachings. I'd been doing it for 8 years, 9 years at that point. And I kind of got it on some level, intellectually, maybe some of the ideas made sense, but I hadn't really got it because I hadn't been through such a testing time. But I realized, it's like, okay, so this is what it's for. The testing time is there to make me go deeper. I have to really understand this practice. And it's not just, oh, well, my ego kind of likes to teach, and I've got some identity as a spiritual teacher, which there's certainly an element of that before. It's, no, this is my own salvation. I'm doing this for me so that I can heal my mind and I can find some kind of peace and happiness in an insane world and ultimately transcend it. So it became very, very real, and the significance of it became huge. I was like, I get why this is absolutely everything in your life. Applying these teachings is so important because it's what's going to get you through the difficult times and be able to function in
true.
same world. So that's seed falling on good soil, and the plants produce corn, and then often something comes from it. So in my case, I felt inspired to start the Art of Letting Go course and community program and community, and so there's something that's sprouted from that. The fruits, and interestingly, kind of synchronistically today, because the last sentence of today's text reading is by their fruits you shall know them, and they shall know themselves. So very much the seed analogy. The seed gets planted, and then the fruit comes from the seed. It's amazing how the Holy Spirit does the this kind of alignment, because that wasn't intentional, just all kind of lines up. So that's the meaning of the parable. It's a very powerful parable, one of the most the better known ones of Yeshua's, all of Yeshua's parables, and along with the prodigal son, that's also a great one. The one about the house built on sand and the rock. These are they contain these fundamental principles in the story that everyone can learn from. And so, really good stories. Yeshua used the stories to illustrate these fundamental truths, and the stories have stood the test of time because the truths behind them are eternal. All right, so there's the discussion and the meditation. If you want to listen to that sometime, that brings us to our live session and to the lessons. So let's have a look at today's lesson. All right, so lesson 68 we're on to. Love holes, no grievances. Doesn't really need any translation. Very simple, very straightforward. Four words, really.
Mm-hmm.
4 words to, if you really applied these words, it would absolutely change your life. Because if you held no grievances, what could upset you? What would disturb your peace?
Yeah, true.
It was a grievance. True. You have an expectation. How grievances work? They work with expectations. Yeshua calls them idle wishes, and grievances are partners or co-makers in this world, because the expectation, the idle wish, then sets up an expectation in your mind. The expectation is not met, and then apparently you have a justification for a grievance. See how it works. So the desired expectation leads to an aversion. In Buddhist teaching, call it aversion. In course teaching, we call it a grievance. And then you now resisting something, going, this shouldn't be. And yet it is. Now you resist it. And that resistance makes the ego seemingly real. Doesn't it? Separate self gets strengthened by that resistance. And what you resist persists. So the resistance means that the problem doesn't go away. Often it gets worse, because the ego is using it to perpetuate its self-concept. And the more you have the grievance, the more that self-concept is energized and strengthened. And so it loves grievances. And so the ego is saying, well, the more grievances, the better. And it tries to manufacture grievances in all your relationships and all your encounters and all your interactions, because that's actually what it wants. So once you understand this, the depth of this lesson, which we'll go into now, the remedy is obvious. Well, there's only one way out of this, is you got to let go of the grievances. Because love holds no grievances. If I hold one grievance, then I'm denying love, and I'm believing in this entire thought system. One grievance means that you've just bought into the ego system. You're buying all of it: the guilt, the sin, the fear, the attack, accusation, blame, complaint, helpless, enervated little life of limitation, lack, loneliness, suffering, and inevitable death. That's what you buy when you believe in a grievance. That whole thought system with all of its consequences. This is what Yeshua is trying to teach us. And do you really want your grievances? If you understood what they are and what they do to your mind and the consequences of them, you wouldn't want them.
That means everything.
Everything, yeah. No, you can't have one grievance against anything, because the moment you have a grievance, what happens? You're in a somewhat negative state. It's like, oh, actually, that's real, and you feel that feeling and emotion. And in that moment, what you're doing, you're disconnecting yourself from your source again. You're no longer in pure formless awareness of perfect love. You're in another awareness in that moment, which is, of course, what the ego is trying to do, is disconnect you from your true awareness and get you going away with the illusory fairies and goblins and gremlins of this world, and believing in all that, and believing in the story, and Your formless awareness of perfect love is then denied. And is very good at doing that, isn't it?
It is. Well, I find it if I'm on my own, like for example, getting a parking ticket, okay, initially, but then I can let it go much easier than say when I'm with Dave, because he goes on and on about it. So that's the big one for me is on my own, I find it much easier. But when you've got somebody who just obviously gets annoyed, has a grievance about it, then it's more difficult to, yeah.
Oh, well, and that's just your ego using him to perpetuate the grievance in your own mind.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It finds a way. I know. Yeah.
You're going to try and make it more difficult. Okay, on your own, relatively easy. Okay, well, we'll put you with someone who just goes on and on and on about it. And that, there's the grievance, and then it's going to try and get you to believe in that story, because it's just so repetitive. As Einstein said, the world may be an illusion, but it's a consistent one. So the delusion of grievance is incredibly persistent because it keeps the ego's world going. Without your expectations and your grievances, your desires and your aversions, there would be no world. Very simple. The world just simply wouldn't exist. You collapse it, and you go back into your true awareness and just become incorporeal. And the ego fears that, so it has to create a world where grievances seem to be justified, where expectations and grievances seem to be the norm, in order to sustain the separate self. And that's exactly what it's done. If you're honest about, you look at the world objectively, with this kind of awareness that's taught to us by Yeshua, you see that this is exactly how the world operates. And it's no wonder it doesn't work, and it's no wonder there's so much pain and suffering and sickness and misery and death, because that's what it's designed to do. The ego's designed it to engender those thoughts and emotions, only to keep its identity going and deny pure formless awareness of perfect love. That's why it's
it's just pure duality, isn't it? He's things going great, and then no sooner it'll change.
So and it never, you notice in life, things never work out as you think. I know I've got it all planned, and then it just never happens.
Goes its own merry way, yes, of course. But yeah, it's definitely
because that's the way it's set up. Then you've apparently got a grievance because it's never happening how you think it should have happened. So the expectations are always violated, and then you have justification for grievances all the time. And you either buy that program, you say, okay, well, I'm going to believe that, and just go down and try and make the ego's system work. Well, good luck with that, because it doesn't work. Or you go, no, I can't believe any of it. Not one word of this story is true or real. And that's the only way out of it. Because if some part of it's real, then all of it must be real.
Yeah.
You can't accept a little part of it and go, oh, well, my individual identity is fine. It's a bit radical to let go of that. But no, I don't want the guilt and the sin. And I don't want the fear and the attack. No, I don't want that part, but I want to keep my individual identity. That doesn't work. Because the individual identity is the problem. You have done this to yourself. Your individual identification is the whole problem. And the solution is, well, drop the grievances, and then you drop your individual identity. Very, very simple, but not that easy to do, because we're so deep.
Not easy. No. Yeah.
Well, if you believe you're a victim of the world, it's most people's core identity, underneath whatever other illusions they have, then the reality of limitation and lack and loneliness and suffering and death seems to be very real. And it seems that the world does operate this way, and people are attacking you, and there's a lot to fear outside of you. And so your fear is justified, and you need to defend yourself, and you're always being unfairly treated. So you've got to protect yourself against that. And all of that seems to be real. And that's the ego's construct, has created it that way to confuse you and get you to buy into it rather than into pure formless awareness of perfect love. So to realize this and practice this moment by moment, as the grievance arises, as the expectation arises, the grievance arises, you look at it from this higher perspective and you go, no, I don't want any part of this because I know what this entails. I know that this is a really sick thought system. It's only going to lead me to a life of limitation, lack, loneliness, suffering, and inevitable death. Why would I choose that? Is there any reason to choose the grievance over the miracle? And once you start to come into awakening, you realize that there's no good reason. There's no good reason for you to continue believing in the ego story at all. That's the Holy Spirit's reinterpretation of it all. So you can just drop it. You can let it go. And then you start collapsing all these structures, the guilt and the fear and sin. As you collapse those and you deny those, the individual identity gets weakened. The ego, which is just a belief in separation, is getting weakened when you're letting go of an individual self. And ultimately, you just don't believe in this idea of separation anymore. Like, well, that idea is just laughable. It's ridiculous. It doesn't mean anything. I don't believe in it. And you drop it, and you drop everything with it. Okay. So that's the metaphysics behind grievances. It goes quite deep because it goes to the very core of the ego's foundation, core of its existence, which is a false identity, a false belief, and then the guilt and the sin that underpin that. And the guilt and sin then demand grievances in order to remain. So you project, the ego is doing is it projects its guilt and sin outwards onto someone or something else as a grievance. So it blames them. And it says, you're to blame for my distress, so sort it out. And then it gets itself off the hook. It says, I'm not to blame then because someone else is to blame. So I've temporarily offloaded my guilt onto someone else, and I feel a little bit better, maybe temporarily, but it doesn't last. Because the more I do that, the more guilty I actually feel. I'm just perpetuating the thought system of guilt. The more I give something, the more I have of it to give, not so. So when I'm giving grievances and attack, I'm actually giving people my guilt. And then I'm saying, well, I have plenty of it to give. There's no end to the supply. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And this is fundamentally why the ego doesn't work. It's why a grievance is never justified. And that leads us, lovely, very nicely into the lesson. The love holds no grievances. You can read that in the first paragraph. So I'm extended by love itself. And yeah, the ego will just become the belief in separation. Creator will become source. So those are the two translations. Then you can read in the alternative.
Right. I, who am extended by love as itself, can hold no grievances and know myself. To hold a grievance is to forget who I am. To hold a grievance is to perceive myself as a body. To hold a grievance is to let the belief in separation rule my mind and condemn my body to death. Perhaps I do not yet fully realize just what holding grievances does to my mind. It seems to split me off from my source and make me unlike it. It makes me believe that it is like what I think I have become. For no one can conceive of their source as unlike themselves.
Okay.
So it's just saying we are extended by love itself, and it doesn't hold any grievances. And to hold grievances is to forget who we are. So when we hold grievances, we perceive ourselves as a body. So it allows the body to rule our mind, well, belief in separation, to rule the mind and condemn the body to death. We may not realize this, holding these grievances does to what it does to our minds. But it splits us off from our source and make us unlike it. So just, gone the other way. The opposite to what we truly are.
Yeah, it means I must perceive myself as I'm not, as I'm the body. I'm allowing the ego to rule my mind, condemn my body to death. And it's kind of shocking, but he has to tell us what it does. Otherwise, we'll just keep having the grievances, won't we? Oh, my grievance is okay, a little grievance, it's all right, and we tolerate it. And he's saying, you have to have zero tolerance for grievances. Zero tolerance for the ego. One thought, one egoic thought means that the ego is still intact in your mind. There's still this false entity that's able to then generate thoughts and emotions and seemingly give you guidance as to how you should feel, act, behave, and so on. It makes me believe that it is like what I think I've become. So what goes hand in hand with this grievance mindset of the ego is the concept of a fearful, wrathful, separate God, doesn't it? So I must believe that's what God is, because I'm believing in the story of guilt and punishment. And so then who's going to enact the punishment but this fearful, wrathful God? Because we've sinned, God's not going to punish us. This is the delusion of many of these old religions. The Judeo-Christian, traditional Judeo-Christian teachings, based on the idea that God is somewhere outside of you. God sits in judgment. We've sinned. We have original sin, born into sin, and then we must be punished. So we must suffer and die. And God's going to punish us. But then, like in the Christian teaching, there's also the idea of salvation and redemption, but they get very confused. It's like, well, you can't have grievances and sin and this thought system of attack and also be talking about salvation at the same time. So it's very split and confused, very dualistic. So it's never going to work. It's saying you've got to choose one or the other. If you choose Yeshua's teachings, then you must let go of grievances entirely, which means the entire thought system of the behind a grievance must go. So again, just a call to to wake up and see what's really happening in our minds, and then because we understand what grievances are, then we can make the right choice about how we deal with them. Okay, and number 2, shut off from myself.
Shut off from myself, which remains aware that it is the same as its source. Myself seems to sleep, while the part of my mind that weaves illusions is in its sleep, appears to be awake. Can all this arise from holding grievances? Oh, yes. For whatever holds grievances denies they are extended by love, and their source has become fearful to them in their dream of hate. Who can dream of hatred and not fear pure formless awareness of perfect love? So while we're shut off from this true self, which remains aware that it is the same as its source, this self seems to be asleep, and the other part is weaving havoc in the illusions that appears to be awake. So holding grievances is a sure sign that you are in the illusions.
And you must believe then in the entire story of the ego. So the guilt, the sin, the fear of punishment for that imagined sin, the concept of a fearful, wrathful God. You have to believe that because that's what goes with the grievance. So what he's saying is you buy the story entirely or not at all. You're going to buy the ego and its grievances and all the pain and suffering and sickness and misery and death that it entails. Yeah, and you buy that story with one grievance. So every time you hold a grievance, that's what you're doing. That's what you're telling your mind, and you're in the red. In other words, you're in hell, and there's really no hope in that. You can try as you might to try and get out of it with the ego's thought system, and you never will, because it's a closed loop system.
Well, it gives you temporary relief. Yeah, I know what you mean. But it still comes back to haunt you. Yeah.
Well, it seeks some kind of magic solution. Let's say, well, project your guilt onto someone else, blame them. That might make you feel better. Zone out, distract yourself, eat, drink, have sex, go shopping, do anything to try and cover this over and make yourself feel better.
Yeah.
But the only way out of the discomfort is to really look at the source of it, which is the decision in your mind to be a separate self. And to identify as that separate self means that you must then hold grievances all the time. That's the problem. So it's to really see it, at its core and its foundation. Stop trying to cover it over and go, oh, well, it'll be all right. I'll try and find something else in my life to distract me, to make it right. You're saying, no, that's never going to work. You've got to look at the core of the system, which is this false idea that you're a separate self, and its consequences, which are guilt and sin, and then the grievances that you inevitably feel, and you have to undo them. In other words, you have to deny that the grievances exist, because how can a grievance exist if you're not separate? If you're still pure formless awareness of perfect love, and the separation hasn't happened, then what's the grievance for? There's no reason for the grievance, is there? You're just in your true awareness, and that's never changed. Okay, so does that make sense?
Yes.
And when we shut ourselves off from our true self when we believe in the grievance. We spin our minds around in the circle of guilt and sin and fear and attack, and experience the limitation, lack, loneliness, suffering, and inevitable death. And that all just shuts us off. We feel very isolated and alone and afraid. That shuts us off from our own true awareness, which is kind of bizarre because that awareness is always there, but then we've denied it. And so that's excluded now from our mind. This is what the ego's seemingly done to our mind. So we have a split mind, and it's just saying, well, once you recognize that, you can just choose to go back. You can choose to go back to pure formless awareness of perfect love or God anytime you want. That's a choice you can make in every present moment. Okay, so I'm going to read that. Just read that in the original and the alternative in the first sentence.
Yeah. It is assured that those who hold grievances will redefine pure formless awareness of perfect love in their own image, as it is certain that pure formless awareness of perfect love extends them as itself and defines them as part of itself. It is assured that those who hold grievances will suffer guilt, as it is certain that those who let go of them will find peace. It is assured that those who hold grievances will forget who they are, as it is certain that those who let go of them will remember. So it's just saying that we've got two choices, and we can choose to hold grievances, and stay with a separate self and suffer. Or we can redefine and choose pure formless awareness of perfect love and find our peace by letting go.
So it's a very simple choice. This course is very simple. It's a very simple choice. He's just making that choice very clear in these lessons. It's crystal clear. You know, there's no room for ambiguity in these questions, in these lessons, really, is there? Which is what I love about the course. It's very clear. He's not trying to fudge it. He's not trying to tell us, well, you can kind of get away with some of the ego stuff. He's saying, no, you know, the whole thing has got to go. It's the only way out. So the entire thought system based on sin, guilt, fear, and attack, all of which manifests in a grievance. The grievance is like the tip of the iceberg, isn't it? You have a grievance, right? That's in your conscious awareness. But underneath that is this massive thought system of sin, guilt, fear, and attack. And the grievance is just, you know, popping out at the top. So by letting go of the grievance, you then deny, you know, that subconscious beneath the surface of the mind, all of that, and you're denying that, and you're undoing the whole iceberg, which is you know the reason why you'll get shipwrecked. You use the Titanic analogy. You know, you're sailing along. Well, that subconscious iceberg that you saw the tip of it, but you weren't, you know, aware of what's underneath. That's what's gonna sink you. So by consciously becoming aware of your grievances, you're actually drilling into the subconscious mind. When you let them go, you're letting go of this whole thought system, and you're undoing that in your subconscious. That's how it works. And so the iceberg is melting. Ultimately, you know, the entire thought system dissolves, and you live in another God, and all your grievances are over. All right, so next one. Would I not be willing to relinquish my grievances?
Yeah. Would I not be willing to relinquish my grievances if I believed all this were so? Perhaps I do not think I can let my grievances go. However, that is simply a matter of motivation. I will try to find out how I will feel without them today. If I succeed by ever so little, I should never have a problem with motivation to let go of my grievances ever again.
Okay, so
I was just saying, even just a little of letting go, then that in itself should be enough to motivate you to be in the correct thought system. The pure formless awareness of perfect love. It's
you're
just,
saying our motivation is key, isn't it?
yeah.
How motivated are you? You want to let them go. So if you can get a little glimpse by practicing, you maybe don't have that full motivation, that full willingness yet, but saying, well, practice, give this a chance. And if you can get a glimpse of the state that you can live in without grievances today, then you know that's a massive step forward. I'm trying to find out how I'll feel without them today. Okay, so let me be open to just letting them go and seeing how I feel. And if I feel better, you know, then the motivation should be obvious. Well,
Yes.
if I feel much better without the grievance, so it makes sense to practice letting go of grievances because it's going to make me feel a lot better and help me to function much more smoothly in this life. So there's an immediate reward because salvation is right here, right now. You can go into the correct state of mind and experience that, you know, that grace, we call it. and experience the love, peace, and joy right now, and that will motivate you to carry on. Okay, so very simple but very profound. Shall we practice this, because we're into the practice now in this paragraph? So we do this in a meditation, 15 minutes or so.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, so just making yourself comfortable, sitting with your feet shoulder width apart, in your favorite meditation posture. Keep your back straight. You can cup your hands in your lap, or put your hands, palms facing upwards on your thighs. Close your eyes. Start off by taking a nice deep breath in through the nose, just to initiate this. And breathing in, noticing how the stomach rises and the chest rises, and the subtle flow of air in through the nostrils. You clench the sphincter muscle to lock the energy in. Draw the energy up your spine into your heart center. Putting one hand on your heart, connect with your heart space. Draw it all the way up, the warm wave of energy rising up through your heart center, up the back of your neck, your head, to the crown of your head. Maximal inhale breath. Pause at the top of the inhale. And now search your mind for those people against whom you hold what you regard as major grievances. Some of these will be quite easy to find. Dwell on them for a bit. Listing them in your mind, noticing how you feel when you think of those grievances. Think of those people concerned. And now, as you breathe in again, just top yourself up. Now, think of the seemingly minor grievances you hold against other people you apparently like. This might be friends, family, your partner, and even think you love. Right? So what minor grievances? These little like irritations, oh, you don't do this, you do that, and so on. And so it should become apparent to you that there's no one against whom you do not cherish grievances of some sort, whether they're apparently major or minor. Doesn't really matter, because as Yeshua says, the ego is just to cover minor irritations, to cover for intense rage. Minor irritation just covers intense rage. And this holding of grievances has left me alone in all the universe. My perception of myself separates me from other people, seem to have my own identity. So determine now to see these people as friends. Say to them, or as you breathe in again, think of each one in turn as you do, but I choose to perceive you as my friend, so that I remember that you are one with me, and come to know myself. Choose to perceive you as my friend, so remember you're one with me, and come to know myself. when you exhale on the truth of that, have a sense of just releasing and letting go of any grievances. You can imagine they blowing out like a dark cloud or black smoke from your mouth. It's going, gone. All the stomach into the spine. All the stomach into the spine. So every grievance, every last scrap of that grievance is going, gone. And just sink inwards. I think of yourself as completely at peace with everyone and everything. Includes things like the weather, safe in a world that protects and loves me, that I love in return. There's nowhere else to go, nothing else to do, nothing else to think about. You just breathe, observe the breath, breathing in and out through your nose, relax into this grievance-free state. Tesha says if you can experience just a glimpse of the state of freedom, taste of heaven, you might call it, and you will have no problem in the motivation to let go of your grievances again. Sinking inwards as you breathe, going deeper and deeper with each breath into the pure formless awareness of perfect love beyond grievances, where the grievances don't exist. Love holds no grievances. Remind yourself of that. And then just give yourself a couple of minutes of deep connected silence. Just to experience the state of being free of grievances. It can give you just a taste of heaven and strengthen your motivation to let go of every single grievance. When any grievances come up, when you're doing this, just look at them with awareness. Breathe into them again. Remind yourself that love holds no grievances. Love doesn't know about grievances at all, so these grievances cannot be real. Just fictions of your mind. Love holds no grievances. Breathe that perfect love into every pore, every cell, every muscle of your body, every part of your mind, every fiber of your being is in this loving awareness. and holds no grievances. So breathe the light in, beautiful golden or white light. We can visualize that if that helps you, into the grievance. If you feel that grievance sitting somewhere else, that sits in your heart, your chest, in your stomach, breathe the light into that. Beautiful, peaceful, loving light awareness, dissipating the darkness. It's going, gone, and then just help it on its way with your breath. So blow it away. Imagine that dark energy, that cloud leaving you. Blow it out. Letting it all go. Releasing. Movements. And then just sinking inwards, surrendering. Nowhere else to go, nothing else to do, just stay in this grievance-free state for another minute or two of deep connected silence. Just appreciate the freedom, the love that comes when you drop your grievances. The next 2 minutes of deep silence. So just gently coming back in this deep connected state. It's an awareness of the body and the breath, senses and the world. And on the count of 3, you open your eyes. So 1, just breathing in, noticing how the stomach rises and the chest rises, subtle flow of air in through the nostrils. Pause at the top of the inhale, smile. Just scan your mind, noticing thoughts, emotions, related body sensations going on, particularly anything that feels negative, limiting, contracted, constricted in any way. Any grievance, in other words, against anything, could be against the weather. And one more time, just let that go. Say love holds no grievances. So I can let this grievance go. Blow it away as you exhale. The breeze of your breath like a dark cloud or black smoke leaving you. It's going, gone. From the lower stomach into the spine. Expel the last remaining air out. Just let go of all of your grievances. Dropping them all to the nothingness they really are. And you rest. This grievance-free state for a few moments. Notice the clarity, the peace, and the freedom that come in the state. For a few moments, the gap between breaths is also exquisite little gap in mind of no thought. Perhaps you can just have that brief moment of pure awareness, pure formless awareness. We call it perfect love. Acknowledge it, smile. This is the source of your happiness, your peace, your love, your joy. Everything comes from that. Everything real, everything true, everything valuable in this world comes from that. And your grievances just cover that over. Recognize that it makes complete sense to let go of your grievances because you don't want to cover these loving, peaceful, joyful thoughts and emotions over anymore. You want to experience them. So it is said and so it is done. So count to 2, just breathe in, notice the breath flowing in to the nostrils. Notice your stomach rising, the chest rising. It's also air into your nostrils. Just pausing, noticing what you smelling as you breathe in, tasting, perhaps touching, subtle flow of air in your skin, perhaps. Notice what you're smelling as you breathe that air in. Notice what you're feeling with your hands, feet. The weight of your body pressing down into the chair, feet touching the ground, noticing what you're hearing, surrounding environment, but without judgment. There's no aversion. So grievance and aversion in the Buddhist teaching is what Yeshua calls a grievance. So practice this just for a few moments. Now you're going to practice it with your eyes open. So on count of 3, open your eyes. Open your eyes, just look around for a minute or so, just noticing what's going on in the room around you. Notice any object that happens to come to your perception for a few moments. Notice this awareness you've had, you've experienced for the last 20 minutes or so is still there, underlying whatever you're perceiving. And move on to another object. Notice it's the same awareness. And only a grievance really just splits your mind. It says, no, you have a grievance against this or that, this person, this thing. And so it blocks the awareness of this underlying true awareness. And that's the only purpose of the grievance. Maybe you can get a glimpse of that experientially now. Close your eyes briefly. Notice this deeper awareness beyond the grievance. This is your true state, pure formless awareness of perfect love. So the miracle happens. Miracle of dropping your grievances reveals the truth of yourself. Open your eyes again, look around, and just anchor the state in so that you set the intention to stay here in this grievance-free state. To help you do that, practice the lesson frequently. Yeshua recommends thinking of it 4 or 5 times an hour. Just even for a few moments. Love holds no grievances. It's 4 words, not difficult to remember those words. just think about it briefly, particularly apply it if you find any kind of grievance arising. That's the time to really use it. Feel any negative emotional reaction. Love holds no grievances. Breathe into it. Do a quick breath break by listening to the recording I've sent you. Send you a 2-minute one, a 3-minute one, where you can do it in probably under a minute by following the instructions I'm giving you in your Telegram and email messages. So yeah, I wish you good practicing that, and grievance free, and therefore a peaceful day, and evening ahead, and weekend. So thank you, Elaine. That brings us to the end of the meditation and of the session. So I'll see you on Sunday.
Yeah. See you on Sunday.
Oh, excellent. Okay, I'll post. There's a recording of the text, so you can listen to that if you want.
Yeah, and listen to that later. Yeah.
Quite a long session on the text, and you've got the reading as well, which I'll post to the group. Okay, have a lovely weekend.
You too as well. Thank you. Namaste. Bye. Bye.
Now. So that's a wrap for today. Thank you to Elaine for joining. As usual, making the session possible. If you enjoyed this session, then subscribe to the channel to get notified whenever I go live, which is 5 or 6 days a week. And you can also visit lifepool.com. You can see that in the background, my virtual background. Go to lifepool.com, and you can find out more about this program. You can sign up to receive some of the information I shared with you, the daily inspirational quote, the mind training lesson, and a short breath break or meditation to help you practice the lesson. That's all free. And also find out there about how you can attend one of these live sessions. So check it all out, lifepool.com, and hope to catch you on the inside soon. Thanks for watching or listening, and namaste, which means the true grievance-free self in me acknowledges and honors that same true grievance-free self, which is the Christ in you. I'm wishing you much love, peace, and a grievance-free afternoon and evening. Peace.